Hello, horror fans. Today on Terror Talk, we're going to talk about Terrifier.
Yeah, let's just say it's probably only horror fans here today because this is...
Well, I don't know. The Terrifier 3 has a huge box office.
I love seeing that. We'll get to talking about that movie, but oh, goddamn. There was a lot.
It's a lot. We'll get there. We'll talk about all three of the movies. But first, Kathy, we're going to start with a little bit of like the inspiration for this, like where he started with all of this.
Yeah, because I know, so just to simplify things, because their names both start with D. Damien Leone is the director, and David Howard Thornton is who plays Art the Clown.
Got it.
Okay. And Shannon and I had the pleasure of very briefly doing a photo and meet and greet with them, basically like a hi bye. But I loved both their energies, and every interview that I've seen with Damien Leone, he's a lot of fun, and he seems like a really fun guy.
They had a great energy, both of them.
Yes.
And David was dressed as Art, had the whole outfit on, so he wasn't speaking, but he
booped his horn at me though.
Yeah, he acts, as we know, in all of these movies without speaking, and he does a great job. So he did that in our little meet and greet as well.
Art the Clown, it was built into this franchise, Terrifier, that was essentially became a franchise because of this villain who appeared in other films prior to Terrifier, one which is going to be a fact question. But then from there, we had All Hallows Eve, which to me is still one of the most disturbing. And it's unrelated to Terrifier, but it's really where he became pretty famous and where the world went, where the hell has this villain been?
So that was an anthology, for those of you who don't know, and one of the stories had Art the Clown in it. And that's the first time we ever saw Art.
Thank you. I wondered how this evolved, and Art's creation from Damien was really this, it evolved from this thought that it'd be kind of creepy, the thought of a clown sort of following or annoying a woman on her way home from work on a bus.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think about in the city, woman gets on the bus, maybe it's the winter time, 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's already dark. The lights are off in the bus, and this thing just kind of comes on the bus and is not right next to her.
No.
But maybe a couple seats back.
Sure.
And he's doing these things. Maybe he's looking at her. You can feel the energy of...
Yeah, you can.
So he started to...
Of being stalked? Yes.
Yeah. He started to produce this thought around like what this would be. And then the idea was that she was all alone in the middle of the night when this clown sits across from her.
This clown. Actually a clown.
Yeah, actually a clown.
Funny.
And then he begins messing with her. And we see how in every single one of these films, that's how it starts, right? It has, in some of the films, been a male victim as well, but in the earlier ones, it was female, I believe. It starts kind of childishly.
Yes.
Right?
Or like seemingly innocently, but it's creepy from the beginning.
It is creepy, but this is going to merge into our conversation around clowns and why they are like for children, because they're not childish.
No.
They're actually very suggestive. And what they do is they put us in this position of, I think I'm supposed to be entertained by you, but I really want to fucking run.
Yeah.
And one of my first memories, not one of my first memories, but it's a nonverbal memory, is my parents had taken me to a circus, and my dad was holding me, and he's like, "Look, Kathy, look, a clown." And I lift up my head, and the clown's right there, and I buried my head into his shoulder, and I freaked out. And this was like, I had not seen horror films. There was already this uncanny valley.
It's a mask. Yeah.
And the makeup. And this was supposed to be happy and friendly. So
they're creepy. I'm telling you.
They're creepy. And so, as I was saying, it starts out in this seeming like Shannon's saying, this seemingly childish way, but then it becomes more intimidating because through the use of that childish piece, then he starts pushing the boundaries. Then he starts to become more intimidating, more intrusive, and then he becomes aggressive. And this is the idea that became the short known as Terrifier. And that was initially submitted to film festivals and chronically rejected.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Yeah, I can imagine.
What the fuck is this?
Make it stop.
So then Damien started to upload his work through YouTube and platforms that
So many options these days, guys. So many options.
Yep. And the producer of All Hallows Eve, like Shannon was saying, doing this the anthology and collection of shorts, was like, let's give him a spot.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
That's great.
The rest is history, right? It's like from there, he then becomes known as this like classic villain. And if you haven't seen All Hallows Eve, it's pretty brutal.
It is.
I guess we already had the conversation around why clowns are so terrifying. So my other question to you, Shannon, is what is your opinion? Like, what do you think art is? I mean, we know he's a clown, but...
Oh, you mean after seeing the 3 movies?
Human? Or? Is he not human? Is he demonic? Is he supernatural?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start with this. Spoilers, by the way. If you are planning on seeing all 3 of these movies, I would pause now and make that happen and come back because we are going to be talking about all 3 movies, and the storyline does change, and there's a lot of things to spoil about like what happens, because for those of you who've seen the first one, the second one to a certain extent sets up a lot of stuff, and then the third one sort of delivers a lot of like changes to the world, and so it would be spoilers. So to answer your question, I believe he is a demon that possesses. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't in the beginning, obviously, but he died and then became a demon.
Yeah, I think initially his origin story really wasn't developed all the way, and his backstory has changed.
Yeah. Yep.
There's
they're like, oh shit, we have a hit movie. We need to create something that will last.
Yep. And so what we know is he takes a lot of damage and his brains are blown out and he comes back. And so we know that, like, when we look at the classic villains like Michael Myers, we realize throughout, even in the first one, this guy isn't human. He's supernatural of some kind. But I think that it goes beyond supernatural. And like Shannon says, as we now start to bring in more of like this spiritual demonic piece.
Yeah, like a paranormal, whatever. Because this is now, like, it wasn't obviously in the beginning, but now this is, and forgive me, I'm going to say a lot of words here, but this is a supernatural final girl torture porn slasher.
Yeah.
That is what Terrifier's turned into. It didn't really start with all those things because there wasn't a final girl and all that. But like, yeah.
And we have a great final girl we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is there's also a part of the theory of his backstory suggests that he may have once been a doctor because in medical school because of his fascination with human anatomy, but also the great joy in carving up victims.
Yes. So. He does like to... it's all about the groin, stomach, limb pulling off headshot.
Yeah.
That's sort of what he does. It became very patterned by the end of all of these movies for me. Like, okay, well, he's got a thing he does, and every single victim gets it.
He's pretty gross. And then along the way, he has a couple of co-pilots, one being coming in the form of this pale girl, and then one that actually comes out from being a victim. Right. And so I think that the what has happened over these 3, which we'll talk about, is Damien Leone has now created this amazing world. And like Shannon said, we have a final girl now, and she's amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know that Terrifier 4 will come out and all the things. Like he had more money for 3 and etc.
Yeah.
Why? I'm curious before we get into the minutia of all the movies, but overarchingly, this is going to seem like a general question, but I do think it had, like, I have some guesses, but why do you think you like this series so much? Like, what is it about it that is so up your alley?
It's a couple of things.
Yeah.
And one, to me, one of the most terrifying images to me that I remember from being a child is that of a clown.
Right. So the story you were telling me earlier.
And there was one other story where my mom dressed me up as a clown for Halloween, and I looked in the mirror and screamed.
Scared yourself.
Scared the shit out of myself.
Okay.
So clowns have always been makeup clowns. As I got older and started to learn to appreciate horror, then I was loved to be scared by them.
Right.
So there's that piece. I think the second piece is what Damien Leone has done is he has brought back the unapologetic slasher. And he's done it also, though, with a great storyline. And now that he's really ironed out 1 from 3, which it has changed drastically.
Very much.
We have a final girl we are incredibly rooting for. And we have a villain who, in my opinion, never gets old. And I'll share this with you. This is great that you asked this question, because I'll give you my final point on this is David Howard Thornton is so classically trained, not only as an actor, as a mime. He was heavily influenced by Kane Hodder and Robert Englund, who took what could have been really surfaced villains and made them incredibly profound and multifaceted and layered. And I think we don't get that as much with horror anymore. It's now, how much money can we spend? How much can we scare you? How many people can we kill? And Art the Clown is deep. His story is deep. And so this little snippet, given that Art the Clown doesn't have any lines, Thornton's physical comedy training came in handy. In addition to his children's theater experience, he also drew inspiration from other great physical comedians, everyone from Charlie Chaplin to Rowan Atkinson. Thornton also based his performance on some of the great horror actors of all time, like Robert Englund and Kane Hodder, who played Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, respectively. All of these influences came together to create a killer clown worthy of Pennywise's legacy. And so I think he dug deep. He did work. This was not like we put him in a clown suit and he was scary. And I have, as a horror file, I have so much respect, because I don't think we give horror the amount of attention to that kind of acting and creativity. And it's good. And he's really good. And I don't think if you were to put someone else in the same clown suit and makeup, maybe he's still visually scary. He would not be David Howard Thornton.
Yeah, the actor really is the character, which I think is what you're saying, is like it's different. Whereas like Freddy Krueger and Kane Hodder in his
it's intelligent
in his movies. Yeah, it's informed, and they take it seriously, and they try to do a job as opposed to, like, they try to do their job as actors, which is really important. And I think that does. I did, of course, get the Freddy references, because now it's supernatural. And so now it's a supernatural slasher as opposed to just a slasher. And I didn't know how that would translate. I knew that you liked too. And so I knew you were on board for it, but you don't always like the supernatural stuff. So I guess that combination. Now, the other thing that I guessed, and maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't, is that one thing I would add in why I think you like this series so much is that it's vintage gore.
Oh, it is.
It's not realistic. So all of these people talking about how they're like running out of the theater and all that,
throwing up and passing out
and fainting and all the things. Now, I respectfully, it didn't do that to me.
No.
But respectfully, like, I get how it depends on your relationship with actual wounds and gore and all the things, right?
There's only one scene that did, and I'll talk about it.
So for me, like, I laughed at a lot of it. And then I also just sort of tuned out, did other things while he's like ripping limbs off and stuff. Because I don't really, I'm like, cool, okay, here we go again. But it's vintage gore, the way the gore is done. And you look at a lot of gore. So that's why I say it's torture porn, because he tortures his victims. But so you're looking at a lot of gore. So if you're going into these movies and you're listening to us and you kind of want to get a sense of the movies before you watch them, you are going to be looking at a ton of gore, because there's a lot of prosthetics, a lot of effects in this. But to me, it's vintage gore. Like, it's low budget gore, even though he had more money.
Red blood.
Yeah. Like, even though he had money in number 3, and he actually didn't have to do the special effects himself finally in 3. Yeah. The other movies he did them himself. And so I would argue the directing isn't as solid in 1 and 2 necessarily, especially 2, because, he's having to do everything. And that's the indie, vibe. You're doing everything. But by 3, he's actually directing and someone else is doing the special effects. And so the story was better. Everything there was more to it. It was written better. So I just wanted to address the gore thing, because
you're absolutely right. I mean, it really is a throwback to all of it. But then I think what I love too is that it markets itself like it's this cheap horror film. But if you really go and watch it, it's a really intelligent film. The actors are good.
Yes.
The gore is deliberate and thought through. David Howard Thornton's character and character arc, now that we're starting to see happen with this other character, Victoria, all of this stuff starts. It's not mindless. It's not Halloween 6, 7, and 8. It's really its own creative, and now it's merging into something. And let me just say, and this is my opinion. A lot of people, this might be controversial.
But prepare yourself.
I would put Lauren Lavera, who plays Sienna, our final girl,
okay,
in the top 5 with Laurie Strode and Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott. She's got something about her,
okay,
and she is really good, and her acting is really good. And one thing that I noticed in 2, but even more so in 3, was she could play this overly breathy, targeted victim, and she just plays it like a person would actually respond. And I just found her really believable.
Yeah. And she's brunette. Hello.
She's hot, but she's also really, really good.
She is good. She's good. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing what they do with this in the future. But yeah, why don't we talk about the movies a little bit? You want to talk about your order? I know you like all these movies, but do you have an order now?
Interestingly enough, I like the third one the best so far. And I think it's because it's come together. I think then I would go 1 and then I would go 2.
My exact same order.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious order, I think, because it's pretty clear that 1, the OG, really solid slasher, but it was the beginning. And so now that they've been able to take it other places, 3 is where all the supernatural shenanigans come into play. There's actually a bunch of stuff that on a first watch, you probably don't know what the fuck is happening. You don't understand. You actually have to like Google, if you care, to like look stuff up. So that's what we're talking about. Like there's lore now. There's like a density to what's going on. And sometimes you're kind of going like, well, who is that? And why are they doing that? And oh, look, he can do this now. And so you're kind of so there's just more to it. And 1 was a solid slasher, no doubt, but it's an indie movie, and it's an indie movie, and it's pretty simple. And number 2 takes a long time to get going.
There's a bit of a slow burn.
There's a lot of lag. I was bored throughout a lot of it. Then there was like the last 45 minutes of the 2 hours that kicked in, and then shit started to happen. You started to understand what was going on. You started to have a final girl. It kicked in. And so I think it's obvious that 2 is sort of the weakest entry for, I would say, probably for most people. You guys can argue with this if you want, but it seems like that's,
The one good thing that came out of 2 is it gave us
it sets everything up.
Yeah, it gave us our really good characters for 3. And then what I love is I appreciate 2 more while watching 3, because then we figure out how Sienna has become who she is and the background of that story. So it's almost like
you need it, but it needed an edit, in my opinion.
What I think is weird is, and I don't think I'd say this about any other franchises, you could actually watch 1, 3, and then 2.
You could.
Because they do enough explaining in 3.
Okay. I don't know.
It might confuse some people, but I just think like 2 is almost like a flashback in my opinion.
But you get to know the characters, and there's just from my perspective, because I watched 2 and 3 in the past week for the first time. I didn't watch them when they first came out. I watched them in succession as a new viewer.
Okay.
So what I can tell you is that from that perspective, from my perspective, there's many things that happen in 3 that like I wouldn't necessarily care about, because you actually get to know like the brother and the final girl and kind of all those things. Like I wouldn't know any of that going into 3 if I didn't watch 2. But I would warn people that, there's some stuff you can fast forward through.
Yeah. And I also like that 1 ties to 3 nicely with Victoria's story.
Yeah, well, that would be more helpful. It'd be more helpful if there was more of that in 2.
Yes, because they leave her out for the most part in that.
Yeah, and I think he obviously just didn't know he was going to do it.
Probably.
He just didn't know he was going to do a 3 and a 4 and a 5. Yeah. Now he knows, so he needs to get his shit together. But
great character to bring back.
In that sense, I could totally see where you're saying like you could go 1 to 3, and then you would actually have more funded knowledge around Vicky, because of course I was like, well, who's that now? And then I knew, but like I watched 1 like 3 weeks ago, so I wasn't even thinking about Vicky's character, and then there she was. So I mean, it was a great person to dredge up, pun intended. But
yeah. And I just like the development of her character of like she becomes possessed by the little pale girl and then they become like this Bonnie and Clyde together in 3, which is just their kills together. And a couple of those scenes are just so fucking gross.
Yeah, and you get a female demon as well. You get a female demon character. Mm-hmm. Did you want to do your
clown and facts with girl? Okay.
Let's do some facts and then we'll dig into the movies a little bit more and then get some answers.
Number 1, Allie's death in Terrifier 2. If y'all remember, probably one of the most disturbing, is influenced by which serial killer in history?
Oh, okay. Gross.
Number 2, what 2008 short film directed by Damien Leone gave Art his first appearance?
Okay.
Number 3, how many people has Art killed on screen in all 3 films minus the 18 he kills in Terrifier 2's dream sequence? So don't include those.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because he had a field day in that.
Yeah, he did.
Number 4, how long was Art the Clown's makeup transformation with the actor?
That mouth is so gross.
I know. And then number 5, which scene in Terrifier 3 made David Howard Thornton so nauseous he almost threw up during his own killing?
Okay. I'll be looking forward to hearing the answer to that
right?
one.
It's like, now watching back, he's going to be like,
yeah. Should I ever watch them again? That should be, I'll remember that. That's so funny.
You want to talk a little bit about 1?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about 1.
What do you think?
Well, I liked it originally. It wasn't a movie, of course, that I was going to throw on all the time, but I had seen it a couple of times and then I rewatched it for this episode. And I still think it's, should be on every list of like, here's some slashers you should have seen kind of things. And then I would qualify it as this is an indie slasher. It's got very much indie film qualities. It's got all of the tropes of a slasher, the girls and the this and the that. But then, of course, they're going to go more in a direction of really vintage gore, brutal, kind of really gross, over the top, too long on the kill kind of shots, which people who love slashers and gore love. So, and I think it's a good movie. I mean, I think it's a solid movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a slow burn too, but it delivers for sure. And it was unique in the sense that, unique in the sense that it had the vintage qualities to it. I think that's what was unique about it, because although obviously you could say, well, that's not unique because it's vintage and it's been done. It's like, yes, but at the time, in that moment, in film festivals, it was like, oh, they're really gonna go for it. This is not art house, bullshit.
No, it's not. And in some weird way, Art, and they've certainly changed this, Art's character in number 1 is almost like taking this revenge on these 2 women who are like mocking this facially disfigured woman. Mm-hmm. And then he ends up becoming partners with the disfigured woman. And there's like almost I don't want to say the word heroic, but kind of like a weird thing, I guess, going on there where he gets his little panties in a bunch sometimes.
Sometimes
he does. And then he like went full
and then
rage.
Other times, it's like he...
I mean, he did maul her face too, though. So
like classic slasher villains, like Art kills because it's funny to him. He finds it really funny. Yeah. He laughs a lot during his kills. When he's pulling legs off people or scalping them or eating their brains or whatever, he thinks it's funny, and he does it for the sake of killing. And that's a classic slasher kind of thing, that it doesn't have to have a rhyme or reason. Like, we're kind of pulling out that there's moments of we think maybe he has like a reason for doing it, but in general it is classic slasher where it's just for the sake of killing and because he enjoys it and he finds it sort of funny. And so I think because of that early on, so now we have a lot more story, but I think early on you had to have a story that kind of surrounded him because he really was just a guy that was killing people for fun.
Yeah.
So you had to have a story. And now there's even more of a story. And so he's kind of, perfecting it along the way so that now we have more to like hook our teeth into. So it's not just a guy killing for. I like the little girl Terrifier and
the pale girl
in one.
Yeah, the little pale girl. Yeah, and that's the one who possesses Victoria. Yeah.
I wrote. So for 2, I wrote shit, blood, brains, heart, eyeballs, guns, knives, his hands, decapitation, scalping. Like he does it all.
He does.
You just
shit smearing. Isn't that the first one, or is that number
even
2?
in I don't know. Even in 2, like, and I stand by, like, I was like bored through a lot of it, but then when it would, a kill would happen and I'd sit down and watch. But like, so I just started making lists of all the different things that he was doing because they really cover the gamut. It's like they went to special effects school and wanted to try all the things, and that's definitely what they did. And it was very, ripping off limbs and scalping people, and the bedroom scene is very famous for people walking out and getting upset and fainting and all that. That's the scene that's really sort of famous in 2. They call it the bedroom scene because it's really long. In other words, it goes on so long that Art leaves the room and comes back after a while.
Oh my God.
That's how long the scene lasts. And I want to say that there's this one point where he rips her face off. At one point, he does a lot of ripping faces off.
He likes to maul.
He's like already scalped her and pulled off all her limbs or whatever, and he rips her face off, and I laughed so loud.
Are you talking about number 2?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Allie's death.
Yes, I'm talking about
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
the bedroom scene in number 2.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's right. He does leave and come back.
He leaves. That's how long it goes on. He just like takes a minute and comes back on screen. But I just wanted to share with you that I laughed really hard when he pulled his face. Like, that's the vintage Gore quality of it. Now,
it's so ridiculous.
Now, Gore can, like I said, like I'm using the word bore, but basically I just get like taxed out. Like when the Gore goes on for too long, I'm just like, okay, can we move on? But that's just me. I know a lot of people love it. But then he rips her face off, like sort of at the end of it. And I just sort of started laughing hysterically because it made me crack up.
I mean, here's the thing, though. It's because it's not just, and this is where what I was saying at the beginning of this episode is, it is mindless killing, but it's entertaining because art is entertaining.
Yeah.
So it's different than like Leatherface just stripping, the skin off of someone. That's terrifying. But 5 minutes of that, you're bored. This guy's giving us a whole ice-capades like through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He is. He's trying to give us a show for sure.
It is funny.
It
is funny. So,
so that kind of saved it for me.
Her death is brutal, but I would say that it didn't feel as sad and terrifying to me as All Hallows Eve, which was a lot more. That death scene was very traumatizing for me.
This is where I see the relationship to Freddy. Because Freddy Krueger, like Nightmare on Elm Street started out serious, even though it was the 80s. And so it's funny to us now, but it was serious what was going on in that. And then it became kind of a joke.
Yes.
And I would say art is in the middle somewhere, because while art is quote unquote funny, if you really think about it, he's doing all those things because he finds it funny. And that's really sadistic.
Yes.
And so that's a little different, right?
And he's not as campy as Robert Englund.
No.
Like he's not
talking to the camera.
You're absolutely right. He's not. He's not
mugging for the camera, but he's not.
Right.
He's not breaking the fourth wall.
He's not breaking the fourth wall, and he is. When he's not killing, he's pretty serious. Like he's. Yeah. So.
Yeah. There's just that nuance of like he thinks it's all really funny is what's disturbing to me.
Number 3.
It's a Christmas movie.
It most certainly is now.
It's all Christmas is all throughout. Santa's in there, everything. It's a Christmas movie.
Oh God, the Santa scene.
Cozy. It's a cozy Christmas movie.
The most disgusting kill scene in this was the shower scene for me. But where I did laugh is when he just kept crushing that guy's nuts. It was. There
are some funny things. He was groin obsessed for sure.
He was so groin obsessed
in both movies, but 3 really ramped it up. It's like that. I just make lists of all the things, and groin was first. So for this movie, I made a list as well.
Okay.
Groin, stomach, chest, limbs, head.
So
face.
here is where his sadism is takes front seat to his comedy in this one. I love that scene. This is a spoiler. I love
all a spoiler.
Yeah, I love that scene where the girl has already, the one that's obsessed with Sienna's story, right? She's already said in a prior scene, she says, you know, what it must feel like for the victim in the last moments to like feel his breath and see his eyes or whatever. And then that shower scene, he slows it all down. He's got those flower glasses on, right? But he's right there, and it's funny, but it's also like
It's a callback to what she said.
it's dark.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
really
what
dark.
he does to her,
A lot of it is really dark.
is
The kills are dark.
the kills are
Like,
really sick.
again, he finds them funny, and he may be putting on a show for us sometimes, and sometimes the special effects are corny and funny, like on purpose. But yeah, the kills are dark.
I love Sienna's character build in this one. I love that we learn more about her relationship with her father, and this is where a lot of the supernatural stuff comes in. She's almost like an archangel or like a Joan of Arc. You know, in this dad made her this superhero, and he knew that there was something really special about her, that she didn't know entirely what it was about. And she has those flashbacks. And so her character really builds in this. And then that end scene, that fight scene at the end with the chainsaws and the blood, and then the dad's body pinned up to the wall, decapitated. It is fucking hilarious.
There's a lot of really fun scenes if you're a real slasher horror fan. Like, I get why regular folk went to the movie to see the new horror film and went, "Oh,
What is this?
Okay, bye. I'm not staying for this." But also, it made a lot of money because for the same reasons, probably. A lot of curiosity killed the cat, kind of a thing.
No pun intended.
No, I don't know. Do any cats die in these movies?
I'm opening a soda. There we go.
You wanted to make sure we didn't think it was beer. Or
Just if there's some weird sound.
there was a Shining homage at one point. There was Tom Savini has a little
his cameo.
thing, a little LA reference. There's an ad for the haunted hayride on the train in the movie. There's a lot of little Easter egg things, and
Yeah.
I'm sure if and when I watch it again, I'll find more. But I saw a lot of those and wrote them down as I was going because there are a lot of little horror things. I feel like there's even more homage in this movie than I picked out because this was one of those opportunities where a director who's finally got a budget can put in, you know how they do, especially in horror, they can put in a lot of their little doodads,
Sure,
and entertain us all with that. Do we want to get some answers?
Let's do it. Clown affair.
Oh.
Allie's death in Terrifier 2, probably the most disturbing, is influenced by which historical serial killer?
And Allie's the bedroom scene one?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's how they believe this woman's death actually happened.
Is it like a Jack the Ripper
Yes.
one? Okay.
It was
I don't know the names.
Mary Jane Kelly, the very
yes.
last one, the one that Heather Graham plays in the movie.
Yes, the one everybody
The one everyone really
talks
knows
about. Yeah.
because they discuss in length how she
Yeah.
was disemboweled and ripped apart and all this.
Yeah, and they thought he was a doctor too.
They did. Number 2, what 2008 short film directed by Damien Leone gave Art the Clown his first appearance?
Well, you said it, and now I don't remember.
I didn't say it.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I didn't. I said to which
talked
will
about it.
not be named because
No.
it's a trivia question, but it's a short called The Ninth Circle. Number 3, how many people has Art killed on screen in all 3 films, minus the 18 he killed in Terrifier 2's dream sequence?
24.
Close, 26.
Nice! Look at me.
You could have picked any number.
I didn't know, but I just kind of did a quick
But you
calculation
knew.
in my head.
You knew.
Oh, I knew, Kathy.
How long did it take Art to get his makeup done? What was the transformation
6
time?
hours.
3 hours.
Oh, okay.
There really aren't a lot of prosthetics on him. So
No, it's just a mouth, I guess.
still a long time
Well,
to sit
and
there.
with an indie film, they can't really afford 6 hours.
True. Which scene in Terrifier 3 made David Howard Thornton so nauseous he almost threw up during his own killing?
The one where he saws the body in half or something?
No, it's the rat tube.
Oh, God. Yeah, that was fucking gross.
And then just cuts the throat and the rats just pop on out.
Yeah, and if you don't like gross horror, like I'm not the biggest fan of gross horror. So there were times when I was like, okay, we're going to be gross. I'm going to look at my computer for a while. You do have to kind of like gross out horror. That's another one of the tropes that's kind of going on here. But also because it's vintage gore, you can kind of manage it a lot more than if it was really realistic, in my opinion. Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
Wait, that was the last one, right?
That was it.
Okay, well, I would imagine you are very much looking forward to Terrifier 4.
I am.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing about what you think of it and how, if we're going to go, go the distance and have 9, 10, 13 movies like the old days.
I hope not, because eventually he'll jump off the train, and I don't. I don't want to do this without Damien.
Well, and then someone will remake it in 20 years.
Oh, God.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Terror Talk. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Kathy. Sleep safe, everyone.